Okay. One of the questions that, Liv had asked me about, she was having a problem with her application, migrating it to the database, and there are two things. One is I keep saying you have to understand the foundational concepts. And actually, I was complimenting TJ on something that he was able to put together. And I asked him, how is he understanding the material? And he said, well, it's going back to the fundamentals and putting them together. So it's very, very important to, if you have something if it's not clear, clarify, ask questions, explore, experiment. The other is make mistakes, but understand what the cause of the mistake is. Okay, so Liv has this data in her application. Okay, and she said she spent several hours with Eric, and okay, so she has pretty much this same set of data for populate colleges, WVU and Duke, and for conferences she has Big East, and she decided to go with the word 12 instead of the number 12. Okay, did you have this? You did not. Okay. Why is that such a key issue? Well, let me ask somebody to spot this. Okay, Megan?
Because you're saying that college number 2, college ID 2, whatever that is, within conference ID 3 was with ACC, and it shouldn't have it.
Exactly. It's as simple as that. You violated a foreign key reference, right? So, and that's why I said, well, and it's fine. Several students over several generations, now nearly 25 years, so they have their own children who have been upset with me because I never gave answers. But 2 or 3 years down the road, they were actually happy or thankful that I didn't give them the answers directly, because ultimately what companies are looking for is not do you necessarily already know this coming in, because in several cases you're going to be working with software and technology that doesn't exist as of now. So at least whatever the 25 years so I've been working with software systems, the change occurs approximately every 4 to 5 years, where there is fairly significant change, whether it's app development in 2010 to data analytics now. There'll be something else another 5 years from now. So it's probably towards business intelligence being with data analytics getting more closely intertwined. But anyway, so try to understand those fundamental concepts, and then you can start identifying where the problems might be. And if something like that occurs, and then if nothing is working, if the migrations are not working, my last resort is to go back into the database, and then I delete all the tables and then remigrate everything. And in deleting the tables, if I said, okay, I will click on conferences and try to delete this. Okay, let's see. If I try to do this, I did it very confidently, knowing that it's not going to get deleted because I won't. So why didn't it delete it? How many of you know the answer? Okay, Chris?
Because it's related with other tables. There's a line.
If it's related to other tables, like for example, college conferences is also related to other tables. If I tried to delete it, would it stop from being deleted? Well, you have to understand why. This is where, again, I go back to the concept. It's not just the connection, but maybe Logan did, since Megan answered last time. What about it?
College conference is a child table.
How do you determine something is a child? Maybe the better word is, as I said, dependent table.
Okay.
How is it a dependent table?
Because it has conference and college primary keys.
Well, you don't want to just call it, it's not only a primary keys, but it is what? It's a foreign key. It's a foreign key referencing the primary key in another table. Okay, so that's what makes this the dependent table or the dependent class. Okay, so if you're depending on something, so college conference depends on something else. Is there any other class or table depending on college conference? This depends on college and conference, but college conference is not the parent, it's not the one being depended upon. So if it's not being depended upon, then you can delete it. So if you start from the lowest level, if you look at it like grandparent, parent, child, so if you want to start deleting, you will start from the lowest level. And then, so there's no child connection or dependent connection to the college conference. Okay. So the reason you need to know it is if you want to clear up your database with the tables, you need to know where to start. And if you have to start from college conferences. And similarly with these identity tables that were pre-built, which do you think, by just looking at it, the naming of it, which can you say you cannot delete first? How many of you know the answer? Okay, Kash, which one or which ones can you not delete first?
So we cannot delete net users.
Okay, and what is the reasoning for that?
Because we have user claims, user logins, user roles, which seem like
depending on this.
Depending on
Good. Okay, and then the other thing that seems to be different is, or which doesn't seem to rely, these three clearly are indicating, based on the naming, that they rely on users. And then you have the other one called roles, which is based off of this. So these two are the independent tables, and these three are the dependent ones. So you have to get rid of these three first. So you can see the importance of naming, because otherwise you'll have to go inside of the tables to start looking at how they're connected. Yes?
So if I started a new query and I did drop, like my version will drop everything I typed in, would it matter the order that I typed the drop in if I did it all at once?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if you had a script where you had a set of, that's what we were doing when we were writing our SQL scripts. So remember when we had these drop table statements, we had to do it in a particular order. If we didn't do it, so if I have this here, if I were to, so if I did this as says, what will happen? Will it drop it?
No.
What do you need to drop first? It is, yeah. Yeah, so just keep those things in mind. As I said, sometimes if your migrations are really messed up, you'll have to come to the database and clean it up. Obviously, you can only do this during your design development. Once it's in production, if you go in and do this in a company, you will have to start sending your resume out very quickly. They're not going to, you just destroyed the entire whatever system data. You can recover it. This is one of the things which you probably should discuss sometime under security, maybe in 452, because if you accidentally delete data, how do you recover? And especially with databases, you set up like automatic backup plans. So which SQL Server also has, so maybe we'll discuss some of that. Anyway, so that's one thing that I wanted to make you aware, if with data, with foreign keys, primary keys, and so on. Okay. Once you have this, the second is we discussed some things, concepts on Thursday. I want to make sure that you have that functioning. I also said the exam will be next Tuesday. It's only going to be just that one day, so please come in about 5-10 minutes earlier so that you can get into the system, set it up. Also, I will provide a separate database for each of you. So I'll call it something like NIST 450 Exam 1, your last name. So I'll set it up that particular morning or previous night, probably that Tuesday morning, and I won't like you to log in with the same username password to make sure you're able to access it. The other thing is you can use any reference you want to online, your notes. The only restriction is, what do you think is the only restriction? So you cannot communicate with anyone either face-to-face or through email or any other means. I'm very strict about it. I will not allow you to open email or any social media. So if you need to download your own files, please do it prior or put it on a thumb drive. And then at the end of it, I want you to upload it onto FileLocker. So please see if you can access this WVU FileLocker. It's filelocker.wvu.edu. The login is the same as your Mix login. Have you been able to log into it? Okay. Once you've logged in, and you can go through this exercise, let's see, what you will have to, this is some of the 452 students who uploaded some of their files with me. So if you're uploading your project, and I've seen this done too many times, so for example, the last name's basketball solution, it's going to be approximately 40 MB, the size. I don't know why it's not giving the size here. But a lot of students will end up sending me this one solution file. What do you think I can see of your project if you send me this one file? I cannot see anything, okay? So what you need to do is to send me this entire folder, Okay, the last name basketball solution, and the way you send it is you can right-click on where send to. I guess is one way of compressing it, creating a zip folder, and then it will create a .zip version of this, white space and so on. But at the end of it, you will see that the size is about 40 MB, somewhere in that range. And eCampus assignments, they restricted it to 20 megabytes, so that's why I cannot have you submit it as a eCampus assignment. Okay, I'm going to have you try to do this, create the zip file so that you know what to do next Tuesday. Okay, finally it has created it. You don't have to add the .zip. Well, it will automatically add that extension. You can see it's about 40. Usually it's in that range, somewhere between around 40 is what the average size of an MVC app is. And then once you have the zip file, you can go to the file locker, go to upload, and browse and upload. Okay. Once it is this thing scanning and encrypting. Not sure I should have done that, but okay. Once it's on File Locker, you can share the file. So it says share. Then you can search by user ID or by name. My user ID is NASURENDRA, and you can see that it indicates. And then, well, you can also, on the exam file, you can notify me by email, share it, and it will get shared with me. So that's what you need to do for the exam. You'll have, that's why the comment about 10 minutes earlier, 5 to 10 minutes, I'll give it to you for the exam itself by a little before 8:30, and I'll have you go until 9:45, 9:50 to finish it and submit it. And usually there's no memorization type question. It's all conceptual and problem solving applied questions. And will you necessarily be able to answer 100%? I'm not sure. It's been very rarely done. So I use an entirely different scale for grading. Usually around a 75 would translate to an 8. So anyways, the objective is for you to see how well you understand the material and are able to apply it. It's not so much just exercise and grading. Okay, so that's about it. Any questions? Okay. So just be aware if this is 3 or 4. If it's, I don't know what the size, 3 or 4 KB, it means you're just sending me one solution file alone. and not the entire folder. Okay. Okay, that's all the other stuff other than the actual content that I wanted to discuss. This was last class's discussion where this is the cycle that you're going to go through on the exam as well. This is my expectation. I'm going to give a relatively, obviously given the time, a relatively small question, but I will still expect a very simple class diagram. So this will be a starting point. Don't spend a huge amount of time, but you have to design something to start, and then you'll have to create a class with a method for whatever the functionality that you require. So you start off with obviously the properties. Start usually with the simplest whatever class, and then do your migration after you've set up the connection to the database. Right? And obviously you need to connect to the right database, in which case don't connect to your basketball database, connect to the exam database. You can obviously copy paste, but you need to know what you're copying and pasting and the changes that you need to make. Okay. As far as after you have your properties set up, your constructor, you need some sample data exactly like this, and then the method itself, which does the work. And for this method, I want you to set up a test. So, as I said, I'll try to keep the requirement very minimal so that you can set up your test for the functionality, and we discussed the test here. As of now, we are discussing very simple tests, and this is the minimum that, when I say simple, what makes this simple? We've discussed this a couple of times. The functionality here is to get all conferences. Why is this a simplistic test? Eric?
Because it's just counting the number of conferences, not the actual conferences themselves.
We are not comparing the actual content itself. That takes a little more, you have to do a little more work on it, so maybe I'll keep that for after the exam, and depending on how much we get to on Thursday, I might have you do that. But this is the minimum level of testing that you need to do. That is comparing the number of occurrences, not necessarily looking inside to see if the actual conference content itself is the same. Okay. So after you have that, then what's the next piece? So we have the method in the model class, then the test, and what's the next step? You have to, the thing is, you want to run the test to see it is turning green, but if after a while it's not turning green and you're not able to figure out, you probably want to move to that next step, but hopefully you get the green. What's the next step? And if it's not working, try to use the debug option with breakpoints. Once you have this working in green, where do you go? Yeah, it's easy.
You do the set list at 30 miles.
That you have to actually do even before this. So, yeah.
The controller?
Okay, the controller. And for now, we are going to continue working with the simple controllers where you actually when I say simple, where you are creating empty controllers and then creating the methods yourself. After the exam, I will get into how you use what's called a scaffolding to generate controllers and views. But for now, I want you to understand how this works. So I'm going to have you create the controller. So we use the method from the model, get the data and send it to, where are we sending it to? The view. So again, you have to be comfortable with the type of view that we created, where it goes under the specific directory, and this is what we did last class. So if you, one other thing that you really want to do is go to your project properties and do what? Make your start page a specific page, and here we wanted to go under conference simple / the name of the method is it's called display all conferences. I'll save this and close this out. Debug, start without debugging, and if I go to this, I should get a display of all of the conference IDs and names. Okay, so how many of you have this? Let's see, so let's make them around and your database. Can you go to your database or okay, that's the key. Okay. So, do you know why it's not getting created?
Yeah, I didn't see the market.
Okay. Okay.
So what we just get it out from this and
okay, you have to make sure you have it. Okay.
Yeah, I had that.
Okay, what was your question?
You said you recreated with okay.
Well, we go to your package manager, go to tools, Well, you have it in the which project is that. Okay, the main, okay? Go on the test and see the test project. Yeah, the test project is, okay, that you have the entity framework, okay? What is it saying is deposit here? Okay, go, do you have your app config on the test? Okay, if you have the connection there, the connection string. Taking a quick stage.
Yeah, I've been right now.
Okay. Is the ability to directly on the database? Go to the SQL. Where I'm trying to go.
I didn't have it open.
Okay, it's not open. And what did you say, project?
It wasn't set before.
Go to web and set your specific days for non-external programs. Controller, the class name of the controller, front slide, the name of the method. Are all your tests running?
It's not in
What do you have in the and refresh it, so you're seeing the identity table. Okay, get rid of all the identity tables. Just clean it up entirely, all the migration and everything, and then start the process. Eric, are you having a test run?
I actually can't find that now, and I don't know.
The test? Go to the test option. Is the test window? Okay, that's if you run it, run off. What's it? Not the test. The test will not work with it. The test will be, what's the name of the method? Oh, so look to see if you're getting a green there, and then okay, this table I'm trying to delete. Well, but you're trying to delete the roles table, and we just discussed why you can't delete it first. It's being referenced by, So you want to delete all the child tables first.
So over here.
Do you have the view? They all find display all conferences of various you know where that would be? This one or Okay. Eric, do you have it now? No? Okay. The steps are fairly, once you sort of should practice this until you are comfortable with this. The first, as I said, is to create your method, which is get all conferences. Then we went to the test, and we tested it. We said we are expecting 3 conference instances, and then this is the AAA testing. We arrange, act, and assert. So the action is calling the method from the model class, and then doing a count check to compare against the expected. So that has to pass, and once it passes, if it doesn't pass, what's the first thing you'll try to do? If this comes back red instead of green, what do you think? Yeah, actually. Yeah, how do you, when you say how, well, okay, and then what's the next thing once you see a potential cause for it? Yeah. Debug it using breakpoints. Okay, that's you want it to stop, and you have to find out where exactly the problem is, what's causing it, so that you can fix it. And then once you have that, you can go into your controller. The controller is going to be fairly straightforward. Here you're just displaying it, and you're calling the method, and then sending the view. And I think it was TJ who had his view not showing up. And why was your view not displaying, TJ?
It's in the wrong place.
This view for him was outside of this directory. So that's one of the things. What's the convention that MVC is using? It's finding a view by the same name, but it's also looking for this view by the same name in a particular location, and that location is what? How does it know which directory to look? So when TJ's display all conferences was there under views directory, but it still wouldn't display it. So where does it look for this particular view? How many of you know the answer to that? If you put your view in the wrong place on the exam or your project, how do you know that it's in the wrong place? Typically, if you just right-click on this and say create add view, it should go to a particular directory. But if accidentally you created some other place, how do you know it's in the wrong place? Yes? That's one thing. So it doesn't work. But that's only part of the problem. You know that it's not working. So how do you do? So either the view doesn't exist at all, right? But you know that you created the view. You can see it, like TJ could, for example, see the view. It's there, but the system or MVC is saying it's not finding the view. So how do you figure out why it's not finding it? And in most cases, it's not finding it because it's in the wrong location. So how do you determine what is the right and what's the wrong location? Nobody? I'm very surprised. This is one of the things where it's fairly obvious if you look, if you observe carefully. Yeah.
Is it because we put it in the same folder as our controllers?
Yeah, it has to be in the same folder as the name of the controller. So, for example, TJ's view was under views, so he most likely created it by right-clicking Add View. So if you do that, it gets created under the Views directory, and it's looking for, whenever you're activating or running it off of a method that's inside a controller, to look for that particular view under the same directory name. So it has to correlate to that. Okay, so that's how you figure out if it's in the right place or not. So those are the pieces that have to come together. And then the last piece, we said when we are displaying multiple objects, what did we have to add into our view? We are sending multiple conference objects, right? We have a list of conference objects, we are sending it to the view, right? And then we are saying we are going to display that view with the multiple conference objects. What tells the view that we actually are sending it multiple conference objects? Megan? Well, the for each statement, we are using it inside to get at each object. But prior to that, what is it that tells the view that we do have multiple objects and not just one conference object? Yeah. Yeah, the I enumerable, you have to have that. If you don't have it, then the view doesn't know that you have multiple conference objects. It will just display. So even though we have a for each, it will only have that one single object, and it will only try to display that one. Okay, so let's see. Krista, Logan, Chris, and Megan and Ashley are the 5. Ashley, did you have 2? Like when you display your conference, is it displaying the previous data? Yeah. Do you know why it probably happened? Well, you have to check. The thing is to migrate it back and then to revert it to state 0 and then move it forward and see if it happens again. But maybe you can do it later after we go through today's discussion. Yeah.
When you update your database, you have to force it to update that.
Yeah, usually it is, unless you're forcing it to go back to state 0, yeah. But if you're moving it forward, you typically don't want to force. Okay, I'm going to move to the next piece, which I don't know if I'll complete it today, but let's see. This is a little more like a interactive process where the user provides an input. So this was just the user just went to a particular. You can say, well, if they navigate to this particular URL, you're just getting a display of all the conferences. But the more useful version would be where we display the list of conferences from a drop-down list. The user chooses Big 12 or ACC, and then we give a list of colleges that are in that conference. So it is more of a search-based operation or functionality. Okay, So let's go through that. So our functionality is going to be search for a conference. Search for colleges in a particular conference. Okay. So how do we go through this? What do we need to do? The first thing is we need to figure out which clause we want to put this method in. So we want to get at the list of all colleges in a particular conference. So which of these clauses do you think we should put this method in? Probably that's the one that connects colleges with conference. So we will say, so we'll go into college conference. The previous one was just get all conferences, so we put that in the conference clause. So here, let's see, this is end clause, end namespace. So I'll put this here. So let's see, what should we call this? This is find. The method name is find. Okay, I'll just put it find all colleges currently in a conference. So that's the name of the method. So public. So whenever you're looking at multiple instances, do we make it a clause or an instance method? Whenever it's multiple instances, you make it a class method. That's the rule of thumb. If it belongs to only one instance, then you make it an instance method. So this is a public static to make it a class method. Okay. So what are we expecting to return here?
The colleges.
Okay. We could either return. Okay, so we could just return the list of colleges, or if you, let's say, you also want to, maybe let's say we want to get information, and just to make it a little more complex or interesting, so we want to, let's say, display college. Just for the sake of this, we'll just see it college ID, college name, and let's say the date they began in that particular conference. Okay. So did I call it date begin? Okay. So let's say we want to display these three. If I want, what Liv said was we could just go with the list of colleges if we didn't need anything like date begun in a particular conference. Why is that so? Date begun is a property of college conference, right? The connecting clause. So in this case, and this makes it a little more interesting, what you want to return is this connecting clause, okay? But in addition to the connecting clause, what the connecting clause, which is college conference, has this date begun, and also it has references to the connecting objects, that is the college and the conference. So, but in this case, what we want is not conference information, but just the college information. So we have to figure out how to do that. But the main piece in the puzzle is really the the current class we are in, the objects of the current class, which is the college conference. So I'm going to return a list of college conference objects. Okay, so I'll just say colleges in conference. Let's go. Okay, this is a new list. Okay, there is one other piece that's missing when we are doing this search for colleges currently in a conference. To be able to do this search, what do we need? So we said there's going to be a drop-down list of all the conferences, right? So when a user chooses a conference, let's say the Big 12, what do we want to send into this method for it to do its work? What is the easiest way to find the colleges in a conference? The ID, good. So we want to send in the conference ID. So that's the parameter here. So it's a conference ID. Okay, so now we are going to write a SQL-like statement. Essentially, it's SQL in C#, and Microsoft has called this SQL in C#. It is the term that they've used is LINQ. Has anyone come across this term? It stands for language integrated, I believe. So language IN query LINQ. Let me just verify this. .NET language integrated query is what they termed this. Okay, so this is essentially, you can think of it as I said, SQL in C#, and some of the notation is somewhat similar. So the first thing is, how many more minutes do we have? About just more than 15 minutes. First thing is we need to get the data from the database. So I have to specify like what did we do previously when we were getting data from the database. How many of you know what we did? Okay, Ashley. What's that? Okay. Okay. Yeah. But the DB application context, and if you, let me see, DB doesn't, okay. The good thing is IntelliSense, so even if you remember DB context, you can type that in, and what does it tell you? Which of these two is the one? Okay, Megan? The first one. Okay. This is the representation or representative class to connect to the database. So I'll create an object here. Right? So now this represents our whatever we are referencing as our database. Okay? And once we have this object, we need to go to a specific, when you're writing a query, it's like the way LINQ has been set up is, I told you that when I write my queries, I actually start using the from statement. So here, the structure with LINQ is from, where, and then at the end you have a select. Okay, so that's how it is structured. So in many cases you can just go with from where. So how does that equate into the link query? We need to specify the table in the from clause. So it's going to be database dot. Which table are we looking at here? College conferences. Okay, so college conferences. If we were only looking at data from college conferences alone, we could just leave it as is. But remember what we said, we want to display. If we were just displaying date, begin, and college ID, it's there in college conferences. But college name is not. So if you have to bring in SQL, what would you have done if you needed to bring in another table? A join. In LINQ, one of the methods that does that is the include. So we'll say include, and within quotes, you include the name of that, whatever in this, you're referencing it by the class name. So you use the singular. This is a little bit tricky because the table name itself is what? It's colleges, but we are referencing the class that represents the table in the include statement. So this is when I first worked with this used to throw me off because I used to put the plural and it would never work. So just keep that in mind. On the exam, I'm not going to tell you if you make that mistake. You have to be aware of it. Yeah.
The database dot college conferences is referencing the table.
Yeah, this is going to the table in the database. So we said database, go to this table in the database, and when you're getting the data, include the associated college data. So otherwise it won't bring back the college name, and whatever belongs to the college object or data table won't be brought back. Okay. So from here we want to, so that's the from. So I'm going to say from, and you can, so well, it's not officially from, there is an option to include a from as well. I'm just breaking this up into multiple rows as though I'm writing a SQL statement, and then if I put a dot, it gives me these options on the next line, there, okay, and I'll just push it back to as though it's starting with that same point, where, and I'm going to give, there are many ways of specifying the where clause. I'm going to use something called, it goes with LINQ, it's called a lambda expression, and it's sort of, you have to start thinking of it as something being intertwined with these LINQ queries. So what you specify is you're looking for college conference objects, so I'll say CC, okay. I'm looking for college conference objects such that, and you imply, and you use this equal to greater than sign to say, this is basically saying I want college conference objects for a particular condition, and that condition is CC dot what? CC dot I can either go to well, should I choose college conference ID or should I choose conference ID? What am I trying to set a condition on? The conference ID which the user has chosen. I want it to equate to the value that's coming in as a parameter which the user has provided to us. Okay, so that's one condition. What's the other condition? What does this indicate? Yeah.
You want to display the date again, but you want the end date to be null.
Okay. So when you say currently, it means that the end date is null. So this is the second condition, the AND operator. What's the AND operator in C#? It's not AND. It is this. Yeah. The two ampersands. So you have to bring that in. So which is CC dot date end should be equivalent to null. Okay. Yes.
How does it know that I'm assuming that that's like the abbreviation of the alias for college conference?
Yes.
How does it know?
It is because we are, so this is, we've already specified that this is the table that we are referencing in the from. So when we use an alias, if in SQL, if you use an alias, it knows you're referencing to that table. So instead of saying college conference as or using the alias in the from clause as you would in SQL, this is you're saying this is you're using the alias in the inside of the layer. So whatever table you are including here is what it's going to. So you can use any letter or any name, and it's going to reference the same thing. Okay, so that's the where, and so we are getting all of the columns and the rows that are here. We are not going to restrict it. If you wanted to restrict, then you would use a select, but to make it simpler, we will leave it as is. And then the last thing I need to do is I need to send this to my. This is going to be stored inside of my list, right? So colleges and conference is the list that's getting returned. And you can see as soon as I did this, it started to complain. So what I need to do is take this entire list, this entire data set that's being generated, the multiple rows, and then convert it to a list of objects. And what type of list of objects am I trying to convert it to? It's a list of college conference objects. Okay. So if you want to, you can put it on a separate line to indicate that this is the conversion here. So this is from, so you're having a list of, you're selecting all the columns. So if you're selecting all columns, you don't have to have a select statement. From college conferences, include the data from college to include the college name, and then you're putting the where condition. There are two conditions here. So just go over it carefully so that you start understanding what's happening. How many of you understand the logic here? If you understand SQL, it should be, you can think of it as an equivalent in the object area as well. Okay. And then finally you want to return this. Okay. So once you've set this up, what's the next step? I always want to build it after I create some method or some code to make sure I don't have any syntax errors here. So once I have this, what's the next step? Yeah. Make a test. So let's go and create a test. Do we already have college conference? No. So I'll go inside this models, add unit test. and I'll change it from unit test 1 to college conference test. Okay, instead of test method 1, I always want to name it in some meaningful way, so I'll go into what is the name that I had of the method. Find all colleges currently in a conference. Okay, and so I'll put that as the prefix, test as the suffix. So it's basically going to be this. And that makes it easier to correlate the test method with the method in the model. Okay. So how many of you can do this test on your own? Arrange, try it out, arrange, act, and assert. Try this. Okay, I have only 2 or 3 minutes left. So on the arrange, what do we need?
Your engineers of the expected number of colleges that should be in there.
Okay. Expected number of colleges, so that's 1. Into your actual number of colleges. Okay. Okay, somebody else, what else do you need here? Okay, TJ? Okay, of the list, so which is actual, it looks like colleges. It's a list of college conference, and just make sure it's not, you'll have to get the reference to Okay, so that's the third, and what do we need? Anything else here to arrange? Okay, Megan?
Do you need a list of the actual as well?
If we are comparing the actual values, we would need the in this case the actual is going to come inside of this. So if you want to, you can change it to actual conference list. But the other value that we need, so is what?
The object of the database.
Well, do we need to go to the object in the database when we are acting? So, yeah, we are testing it through this method here. There is one other requirement, right, for this method, which is the conference ID that you're sending in. So usually what you will do is declare it as, you could declare it as a constant, but it's an integer conference ID, and I'll just use some ID where I think I'm not sure if one has any team in it. Is it 2? Conference Big East doesn't have any current teams in it. We need a little more data, so conference ID 2 or 3. Okay, so that's your arrange. The act itself is what? We want the college conference list from by what is the action we are doing? We are calling the method from college conference, and we need to send in a parameter which is in the conference ID, the value that we just provided, which is 2. Okay. And that by itself is not sufficient, because if we were looking inside of this list and comparing, then this is sufficient, but we are comparing what? The numbers. How do we get the actual number? Do you remember? What do we do? We look at this list and college conference list and do a count on that. Okay. And then we compare the expected with the actual. Okay, and this is complaining because what have we not done? Set a value for the expected, and since our data set is very small, we only have one college in this particular conference. So if you build it, or if you go, it should build. Okay, if I go to my test, it shows that there's one test that's not run. Usually when you're running, you want to run all the tests, not just that. Okay, so I'll just run all. Okay, and you should be getting it in green. I always run it at least 3 or 4 times to make sure it's running every time. Okay, so that's the piece that I want you to have working when you come to class, next class, so that we can go into our controller and our views to complete this interactive functionality. The first one was just displaying data. This one takes it one step further in having the user provide an input, and then we'll return a data set. Okay. Make sure that you review this, both the method in the class. This is a more complex method compared to what we have seen previously. And then make sure you're understanding testing of these methods. Okay, I'll stop now. You obviously have to work through it, think about it, make sure you understand before coming to class. Okay.